podcast. We have now this live show, and I'm very honored to have a special guest from the Iranian community of the United Kingdom. Yunus, he's one of the leading voices for freedom for the Iranians in Europe, and he has a broad reach on X and on YouTube, has his own show, and is a very powerful advocate for freedom of the Iranians. We will discuss at this important time now on Sunday. We will discuss what are really the strike options of the Americans, potentially what is the role of the UK, the Europeans, and the Israelis. And we will see if it's now possible to do this historic moment in time and
Yeah.
the liberation of the Iranians, the fall of the Ayatollah regime. And I was today in Vienna at the central demonstration for the Iranian freedom with the member of the Austrian parliament, Andreas Minich, and many others. We were talking and hoping, shouting Javid Shah and freedom for Iran. And so this was my morning already. Now it's the afternoon time. And for this afternoon moment, what better time to have a cup of tea together with Iranian British who can enlighten us what's going on in the United Kingdom. And I would like to ask you first to introduce yourself, also your role in the UK public. And please, Yunus, the floor is yours. And thanks a lot for coming to the Günther Fehlinger podcast.
Thanks for having me. And the mood in Iran right now is that there's a big disappointment between Iranian people, and the reason for that is that they came into the streets in hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Many of them got killed, and now there's talks of a deal being made. And I don't think personally a deal is being made. I think this is all a show for Donald Trump to say, I tried to make a deal. They're the ones that didn't meet our requirements. So I had to strike them. So I don't think Donald Trump is going to take all of that military might to the Middle East if he wasn't going to use it. And I think the attack is going to probably happen in two different stages. So the first stage is probably going to be them taking out Khamenei and Mujtaba Khamenei, the father and the son, and maybe a few others, main figures of the IRGC. And then they will go back to the negotiating table to try to negotiate a deal then. But then if that doesn't work, there will be full-blown. So this is the reports I'm hearing from some of my sources, that Trump is looking to attack imminently, and it's probably going to happen in two stages. One is to
Imminently? You think it will happen tonight or tomorrow?
Yes, within the next week.
On Tuesday is the State of the Union address on Tuesday evening, European time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it should
So I don't
happen
think he's
before.
going to do it before then. I don't think he's going to do it before.
Okay. So still more days for the Iranians to be tortured and by the Ayatollah regime.
Unfortunately, and I think, but I think something's going to happen. I really don't think the Islamic Republic has any legitimacy left. The whole world knows it's left. The population of Iranians are fed up. Even the religious fanatics, some of them are against the Islamic Republic now. So they have no support. They have no support inside the country, and they have no support outside of the country. The reason why they're staying here is probably because of Russia and China wanting access to cheap oil and cheap other gas and stuff that they use Iran for, but also as a strategic geopolitical ploy. Because if Iran falls, then Russia is in a much weaker position, and then so is China. So these countries are also like putting Iran on life support. So by the end of the day, I think the scale of justice or the scale of probability is that the Islamic Republic falls. I just do not see them surviving in the same way they are. And I also don't believe in reforms, because I don't think you can reform something that's rotten from the core.
What's your assessment of the will to survive for the regime? You think it's basically in its last moment, or it will be able to somehow survive the next week?
I think the Islamic Republic will survive as long as it can. I even sometimes use this as an analogy. They're willing to nuke their own country just to stay in power.
Even
This is
that?
how evil the Ayatollahs are. This is how un-Iranian the Ayatollahs are, because the IRGC, they don't care about Iranians. He even says it in their amendments. You know, even Khomeini when he took over the country in 1979. He was like, we don't believe in nationalism. We don't believe in Iran. We believe in the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's the ideology of Islamic Republic. That's why they try to sponsor all these terrorist groups: Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, ISIS, Al Qaeda, even Taliban, because they believe in the Muslim Brotherhood. They don't believe in nation states. They don't believe in borders being drawn that way. So they will get all the help they can from their Muslim Brotherhood friends, which is Qatar, which is probably Turkey, which is also Afghanistan, maybe Pakistan. Um, so under those conditions, these forces are supporting and helping the Islamic Republic to stay. However, on the ground, they have lost legitimacy with the Iranian people. They're also very weak position militarily. They're in a very weak position economically. So Trump is thinking to himself, why should I make a deal when I can just take them out? You know, like they're the weakest they've ever been in 47 years. So why should you make a deal with a wounded hyena?
I hear that Witkoff is having a very dangerous and negative role here in this negotiation because he is basically very close to Qatar and he
Yeah.
is always the opponent of any military intervention. What's your take on that one?
Look, the American base, unfortunately, is a bit divided, both on the left and the right, but also within the right itself. So obviously, the left wingers, the Democrats, are always against anything that Trump does. So even if he cures cancer, they will say something negative about it. So they're obviously going to.
The tweet of AOK, of
Yeah.
this Democratic politician, AOK, Alexandra Cortez, she said no to the war. And
Yeah.
I opposed it strongly on Twitter, but she seems to have some influence in the Democrats.
No, unfortunately, she does. But she was also in the Munich Security Conference where they asked her about Taiwan and she couldn't answer the question. So I think she's an imbecile, honestly. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And I think that the Republicans will stay in power even after Trump. I don't think this Make America Great Again movement is going to die with Trump. I think probably after Trump is going to be Secretary Rubio or maybe JD Vance. But the point
in
here,
Europe, like Secretary Rubio more, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, me too, me too. I think that's the stock to buy, as they say. At first, I thought Vance, but in the last few months, I'd say Rubio. I think he's done a great job. And I think he's almost like the president in acting. You know, he's Venezuela, Iran, all of these things he has to do himself.
His
So what I
speech
think
was much better in Munich. His speech in Munich we liked much better than what JD Vance had to say last year.
yeah, I'm sure. And yeah, I think Rubio is probably going to win. So back to the point is that unfortunately, yes, so you have the left wingers that are against war. Then you have certain right wingers in America, the America First crowd, which yeah, I believe any country should have their interests first, but America first doesn't mean America only. And what you have to realize that the Islamic Republic staying in power is going to hurt American interests over the long run. Okay, so you have figures like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, even within the Republican Party like J.D. Vance, that are opposing the war, which is again, it's either ignorance or it's calculated politics. And I think after the experience that Iraq, America had in Iraq and in Afghanistan, the Republican Party has become very anti-war. But then there's one major difference here. The major difference is that Iraqis never came to the streets to protest, to say, please help us. Afghanistanis never came to the streets to protest. And also, we're not even asking for boots on the ground. We're just asking for aerial strikes. The Iranians themselves are the soldiers on the ground. So this is the thing that people conflate. They're like, oh, look at what happened to Iraq. Look at what happened to Afghanistan. But that's a false equivalence because Iran used to have a democracy. Iraq and Afghanistan didn't. You know, Iran used to have democracy under the Shah. So what we're doing, we're getting rid of the terrorists to go back to what you used to have. And, you know,
This is
Iranians
true.
on general
It's a very powerful argument because I was also for the liberation of Iraq 2003,
Yeah.
but most of the European foreign policy establishment was not. And now everybody who is for freedom of Iran, the counter argument from the foreign policy establishment in Europe is, oh, you will create another Iraq and it will go very terrible and better we make a deal with the Ayatollahs. What's your argument to counter this?
Sorry, one second.
You're welcome. But this is important argument which we hear from a lot of the so-called diplomatic establishment, who are saying we are for peace and we don't want war, and all these people then oppose American intervention. And you will see a significant European opposition against American intervention if it will take place tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah. So, as I said, there's a huge difference between the case of Iran and the case of Iraq. Iraqis never asked to be invaded. They were ruled by a dictator for many, many years. Even before that dictator, they didn't have democracy, so they never tasted democracy, whereas Iranians did with the Shah. Okay? And you look at how quickly the Shah accelerated everything. And also, let's not forget, there's almost a genetic and also a cultural difference between Persians and the rest of Middle East. Persians are not actually Muslim. Islam was something that was imposed on us. Iranians are very open-minded people. Their original religion is Zoroastrian. So, all these countries that you're talking about, Iraq and Afghanistan, they are hardcore Muslim countries, Shia and Sunni. Iran isn't the same. Yeah, maybe you have 10 or 20% of those, but you don't. The second thing is, as I said, is that people are protesting. So people are welcoming. They want you to, because they've tried 100 times to take out the Ayatollahs. They never succeeded. So they've realized that without foreign intervention, they just can't do it by themselves. And it takes every single progressive so-called left-wing box. You have a population of people standing up against a tyrant. They don't have freedom of speech. They don't have freedom of expression. They don't have financial freedom. And the left, the so-called protector of these values, is saying, no, don't help them. So the whole thing is ironic, So I think that today's left wing is not even left wing, or today's liberals are not even liberals, because liberals believe in freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to life, something you don't have inside Iran. So if they were true liberals, they would want to help Iran for sure.
The last 3 years, we had a big movement on the European and American campuses for the Palestinians. And this was carried by a lot of European left-wingers, actually, American left-wingers as well. A lot of Europeans were also going in the street for Palestine. Now, when I go to the Iranian demonstrations, I'm with some of my fellow activists. We are basically quite alone often as Europeans, because most of the protesters are Iranians on the street. And I never saw any European left-wing activist on any of the pro-Iranian demonstrations. Is it the same in the UK? And why is it that way?
I think that there's a huge difference between, if you pay attention to the Iranian protests and, for example, the pro-Palestine protests. In the Persian protests, there is no litter on the floor. There's no garbage. People clean up after themselves. There's no threats being made. There's no chance of death to Israel, death to America, or death to whatever. You see unity. You see Israeli flags there. You see British flags there. You see American flags there. You see Persian flags there. So, and then on the other side, on the pro-Palestine side, you're like, death to America, in America. So why are you in America? If you think death to America, go back to wherever you came from. Death to Israel, okay, leave. It's funny because majority of these so-called immigrants, they come from these countries and then they try to change the countries they move to into the countries they escaped from. So, but Iranians understand it. But as I said, I don't want to sound sort of a supremacist when I say this, but it's something that is true. And I think I believe in it 100%. I think Persians have a more superior culture compared to the rest of the Middle East. And we are Aryans, actually, genetically speaking. That's not to say Iranians are white, but that's why they call us Iran. We're Aryan. It's like the European gene started from Persia, because there's huge mountains that separate Persia and Saudi Arabia. So we're just different people. And I think the problem is the West always puts us in the same category of, oh yeah, they're all Muslim Middle Eastern countries, which is not true. We have a culture that spans 7,000 years. We're the first ever country that was institutionalized. So we belong to the civilized world. Yeah. Persians belong to the civilized world. And unfortunately, the Islamic Republic is like a cancer cell that has managed to take over the country. And once that cancer cell dies, the whole world will benefit. The Middle East will benefit, and by extension, the whole world will benefit. You will see radicalization go down in the West, because I think, honestly, Europe, within the next 5 to 10 years, is gone. if it's going in the same direction it's going now.
Let's
But
not be too negative here about Europe. We want Europe to be strong, but
yeah,
Mr. Reza Pahlavi, he made a comment that he is worried about Belgium. And
yeah,
I made a X statement today that I'm welcoming him as well to be the king of Belgium to clean up the situation. I got some likes on that one, but nevertheless, beyond some, of course, humorous remarks, it's very serious because the European left is also very much against the idea even that royal personality with the son of the Shah could take power in democracy after the fall of the Ayatollahs. And
yeah,
this is something very strange because you come from the United Kingdom and you have a monarchy in the United Kingdom and it's a democracy. But
yeah,
this idea seems to be gone missing with some German and Austrian left. Can
yeah.
you explain why there is such a kind of intrinsic negativity towards the son of the Shah from some circles of policymakers and the public in Europe?
Well, a few different reasons. The first reason is that unfortunately it was the countries like France, UK, and America, the left-wing governments, they're the ones that actually staged the coup and staged the revolution to kick out Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, his father. So there was always this distaste towards his father by the left wing of Europe and America. So that's one point. The second point is that I think, they always try to paint his father as a dictator, which is not true. That was CIA propaganda, MI6 propaganda. If you look at what the Shah did, especially in the last 20 years of his reign, you see freedoms being introduced, you see people's GDP per capita going up, becoming wealthy, women could wear whatever they wanted, there was democratically held elections, everything, freedom as you see in Europe now. And I think Shah was getting too powerful too quick. And, he started to set the price of oil, so they kicked them out. So I think uh, they're apologists, they're Ayatollah apologists. Like you see, we call it BBC, Ayatollah BBC, or CNN even, with Amanpour that was posing these ridiculous questions to Shahzadeh on the Munich conference. I think there's a strong narrative here being played, and the third point I think is that look, they're like, well, your father was in charge. He got kicked out because he was a dictator, which he wasn't. What makes you better than your father? But then my answer to that would be that Mohammad Reza Shah was one of the greatest leaders of all time in world history, if you're going to look at what he did to Iran. So he was not a dictator. And B, I'm not here to stay. I'm here to lead the transition for the next 2, 3, 4 years. Once the dust settles, we can have a referendum whether we want a republic or whether we want a monarchy with a parliamentary system. That is the small print that needs to be decided down the line. But at this moment in time, we have only one figure, that is Shahzada Reza Pahlavi. He's the uniting figure. He's the figure that everybody knows. Not everyone is perfect. You might disagree with him in some aspects, or you might have some personal issues with him in terms of character or experience, or whatever your criticism. But at this moment in time, we cannot criticize him because we don't have anybody else. And even if someone else comes forward, it takes years for you to know that person, to who they are, where they stand. The positive about Shahzada Reza Pahlavi is that he's been in the scene for 47 years, for better or for worse. And he's been fighting for 47 years. So it's something to be, and he also articulates himself very well, and which is a good thing. And I think now he has gained a lot of confidence, which I didn't think he had maybe a year or two ago. If you watch his interviews now, I think he's a lot more stronger, he's a lot more firmer, he's a lot more even charismatic, I would say, in his interviews. So I think he is the transitional period leader for the
I was
Iranians.
also in Munich at the central manifestation during the Munich Security Conference, and it was very touching and moving to see so many people united,
Yeah,
calling for the Javid Shah and the enthusiasm of the masses for the return of democracy and freedom
yeah,
towards Iran. That was amazing.
yeah,
Let me ask you about Spain. Spain as a role model for the democratic transition of Iran. We have basically, after the dictatorship of Franco, Spain has become a monarchy and a democracy and a NATO and EU member state. So
yeah.
it's entirely possible to use the Spanish role model. Why is that not more used from the Reza Pahlavi as a potential normal European standard to the return of democracy for Iran?
Well, first of all, Spain. I'm not so sure about Spain because Spain is they have a very left-wing government, and yeah, I know they have a monarchy, but they are also anti-Pahlavi from what I've heard, and they are very pro-Palestine, and they're quite on the other side of the spectrum. In terms of the monarchy, look, as I said, that is to be decided in the future. It's not something to be decided now because not everyone might want a monarchy. Some people might want a republic, like the American system, where you have a president and you change every 4 years, and maybe you divide the powers into three branches: Congress, House of Representatives, Senate, executive branch. Some people might want that. Other people, and I think that's the majority of Iranians, I think, want a monarchy. Why? Because all our history, we were a monarchy. From 7,000 years ago, we used to have King Cyrus and King Xerxes and King Pahlavi. We just used to have different kings for different families. So it's the Persian story. And, the one mistake that Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, the father of Shahzadeh, made was that he was the king, but he was also ruling. And I always say this: a king shall reign, he shall not rule. A king shall reign, he shall not rule. Why? Because if a king rules, then if someone disagrees with him, he goes after the king. And if the king is taken out, the whole thing collapses. Exactly what happened in 1979. So, in order for it to be like, for example, you see the UK system, the king here does not get involved in politics. He's just a cultural symbol. You see? So, a king should be a cultural symbol and the continuity of that country. Whereas I think the parliament should have elections every 4 or 5 years, and then we can decide. And I don't think the king should be involved in the day-to-day running of the country. Not at all. And that was one of the mistakes that Mohammad Reza Shah made. He should have maybe decentralized the powers a little bit underneath him. So if the revolution couldn't have happened, maybe they went after the prime minister. Maybe they went after one of the secretaries. So I think that was, and Shahzadeh admitted this. He was like, yeah, that was one of my father's mistakes. So yeah, I think that was what's going to happen. I think that will be a great model for Persia, Iran in the future.
Yunus, tell me, Iran is a very complex, multi-ethnical country with Kurds, with Ahwas, Arabs, with Baluch, with the Azeris and the Turkmens. How
Yeah.
is their situation? Will they respond to the call of revolution? Is the regions where they live also in revolution at the moment? And when the Americans strike, will all ethnicities and religions of Iran rise and be the ground army of the Americans together and build
Yeah.
a democratic new Iran together? Or will it slip into a civil war like in Iraq in 2004-5?
Well, I really hope it doesn't slip into a civil war, because that would be the worst outcome, in my opinion. But that's why unity is very important. That's why uniting, around Pahlavi is very important. So we don't want separatists. But look, there's a risk of that. You cannot downplay the risk of that as a political analyst or even as an observer. You cannot, just sit back on your armchair and say, yeah, let's go and take over Iran. Everything's going to be fine. You have to calculate all the risks. One of the risks is that, we might have separatist groups like the MEK. We might have the Kurds. We might have the Baluch. We might have even the Lors, even from the eastern side. You can have Taliban coming in and trying to invade. You can have the Turks and Azeris, So Iran might be, what happened to Yugoslavia, the old Yugoslavia, and, just how it's separated into 5 or 6 different states. Same thing could happen to Iran. So you have to be very careful. And unfortunately, when that happens, then you have all these different groups fighting each other and killing each other. So it could be a bloodbath. So that is the worst case scenario. I think America and Europe should do everything in their power from that scenario happening. And I think that is one of the reasons why Donald Trump's a bit scared or a bit hesitant about striking Iran. He wants to do a clean job, because there's many ways this can go wrong, So The clean way to do it, I think, is to do aerial strikes on Khamenei and Mojtaba, his son, to take out that family. Because if you take out Khamenei, then the next day Mojtaba, his son, is going to take over and it's going to be back to normal. But once you take those two out, then all of a sudden you give a shock to the system. Now they have to look for a new ruler. And do they want to go for something like that again? I don't think so. Then this is the reports I've heard what Trump is thinking. I don't know whether it's true or not. So apparently this is what Trump wants to do. Trump wants to do a first stage of attack, taking out people like Khamenei, Mojtaba, and a few people around them, targeted strikes, then go back to the negotiating table. I say negotiate now with the new leader that they've picked. So they're maybe relying on a bit of reform that could happen within the Islamic Republic. However, I'm against the reform. I'm against reforming Islamic Republic. You cannot reform something that's rotten. So I think what will happen is that the second round of war or second stage of war is them going completely taking out everything and then bringing in the new leadership, which is probably Pahlavi.
That would be the optimal outcome. And for
Yeah,
the timing, you think it will not be before the State of the Union address?
because I don't think he's going to start a war before the State of the Union address, because then he has to go on there and speak about it. And I think Trump has had a very good year, apart from his loss in the Supreme Court for the tariffs, which I think is ridiculous. I think they damaged themselves, actually. But I don't think he's going to start a war and then 2 days later go on TV and address the state nation, address the world. So I think he would leave it for after that, in my opinion, because then he would have to speak about it, and I think it's going to taint his speech, because now what he can speak about is about all his success that he has had in the last year or so. And then once
Don't
done
you
that,
think it's necessary to convince the world opinion and the American opinion? Because up to now, President Trump has made very little communication effort to explain why it's necessary to remove this terror regime. Because the real reason it's a terror regime for its own people and it's a threat to world peace and it's an enemy regime. So he
yeah,
should explain that to the people in order to build a legitimate case for regime change and military intervention. This is what American presidents have made from the First World War, Second World War, Vietnam, in all the wars in Yugoslavia, now in Ukraine. You need to build a case and to make it clear and to convince the public why it's necessary to end such a terror regime. But he has made very little of this communication effort up to now.
yes. Well, there's two different reasons for that. The first reason is that obviously he was elected on the no new wars. I'm the peace president. I'm not going to start any new wars, blah, blah, blah. And I think a lot of his base voted for him on that basis. So if he starts a war with Iran, they're like, well, you went against your sort of narrative before the election. However, I can sell this as, look, if we don't get rid of the Islamic Republic, we will have perpetual war. So this is actually a peace effort, you know? Also, another thing that I think is stalling his progress is that, unfortunately, he has a lot of internal battles in America. Okay, the president has limited powers. So if he decides to strike Iran, he needs to finish the war within 28 days. That's the power the president has. He has 28 days to start and finish a war without going to Congress. However, if the war takes more than 28 days, he has to go to Congress and he has to get permission. And the permission which he probably won't get, because you probably need more than 60%, and none of the Democrats are going to vote for it. So he's probably going to lose. So the risk is that he might start a war, not manage to finish it in time, and then all of a sudden you have a power vacuum, and then you're deadlocked by the law because you can't finish the job. So that's the risk. The second risk is that the midterms are coming up in America in November this year. So, if he goes to war with Iran and if he can't finish the job cleanly, then that will affect the midterms, So there is all these political calculations coming into place. So, but fundamentally, I think what he will do is what I said earlier. I think he will do the war maybe in 2 stages. Take out the main guys, try to negotiate again. If that doesn't work, go for the whole thing and finish it.
Yunus, tell
Because
me.
if he just takes out, sorry, just one last thing, because Maduro was not considered war when he took Maduro. That's not considered war. So if he goes and just does a few airstrikes on Khamenei, Mojtaba, and a few other IRGC guys and Basij guys, that's not considered a war. So he still has that 28-day window in the native sense to try to finish the job.
So instead of a prolonged air campaign, he will do some kind of repetition of his July strike against Iran or the Maduro operation,
Yeah,
somehow a mixture of that.
yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's what from what I'm reading, that's the sense I get. I could be wrong. I'm not
And
sure.
it will not lead to regime change. It will just be a hammer blow, like it was definitely also in July.
Yeah, I don't want
It
it to
will
happen.
not
I
be,
agree.
it maybe is a signal for revolution, but can the people really rise in that moment? Can they take the risk? Because all the guns are in the hands of the government. Yeah? The Iranians are unarmed and will be easy prey to this Basij and all these revolutionary guards and all these well-armed, brutal formations which are trained to kill and have basically no hesitation to shoot into the masses of the people and to kill civilians.
Yes, 100% I agree. But, obviously, as the president of America, you don't have just one military strategy, you have a few. So, what I explained is one military strategy of what they will try to do. Personally, I agree with you. I think they should just go in and finish the job. Um, but it's not as easy said as it is done. So, as the president of the United States, you have to be very calculated in how you do these things because it can cost you massively. Like Trump is taking a massive risk. I think it's a risk that will pay off, but for his own reputation, because at the end of the day, look, I think every country is self-interested. Okay, even if Islamic Republic is a brutal regime and kills its own people and this and that, as America is sitting there, it's like, well, as long as the ballistic missiles can't reach us, should I care? As long as the nukes can't reach us, should I care? So unfortunately, that's politics, And I think he's trying to do the right thing. I think he's trying to do. I think and I always said this: Trump will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time if he manages to save Iranians. I'm being serious. He will go down as one of the greatest, especially amongst Iranian people. So sometimes you're in these situations, high risk, high reward, and I would really like to encourage him to do it because I think at the end of the day, if you make a deal with the Islamic Republic, you're just kicking the can down the road.
Is not the risk that if he's not regime changing Iran now in the next 3-4 weeks, yeah, which I think is possible and he should do, and
Yeah.
I've asked many times to do that because I think American bombs bring peace and justice in the world. Then the situation is that the Iranian ayatollahs are already, I think, frantically trying to acquire nuclear weapons from China, from
Yeah.
Pakistan, from Russia, from North Korea, and all the bad actors in the world who will be happy to make a fortune paid by Iranian oil. And then within somehow 6 months or maybe next year, there will be several nuclear missiles available for Ayatollah or his son. And
Yeah.
then we can never regime change Iran again because of the nuclear deterrence. And
Exactly.
we will be basically in a checkmate situation and we will have lost this window of opportunity.
Yes, no, I agree. And I think, look, Trump knows that. Trump knows that. And I think also another thing you have to realize is that Trump is the one that actually started all of this with the Islamic Republic back in 2016 when he said the Islamic Republic has no legitimacy. Then in 2018, he came out of the nuclear deal. So Trump has been the one putting the Islamic Republic under pressure. And now this has been going on for 10 years. So it just doesn't make sense at the critical moment to just pull out. This has been in the making for the last 10 years. And, Trump is the protagonist. So Trump knows that. Also, another thing is that, Trump came out and said, help is on the way. We're locked and loaded. Come on, people, let's go to the streets. Let's protest. So now his reputation is on the line. And if he doesn't do anything, then all of a sudden, people all around the world are going to be like, why did Trump just back down? It's going to be not a good look for him, especially amongst Iranians. And there's a lot of Iranians in America. But in just the world stage, it's going to be a very bad look for him because Putin is going to look at that and say, well, Trump back down. China is going to look at that. And now it's going to give them even more confidence to go aggressively after their own agendas, knowing America won't do anything.
The American media is already sharing these memes like taco, like
Yeah,
chickening out. Trump always chickens out,
yeah.
taco.
Yes,
And I
yes,
also shared it because I'm also worried he will chicken out again because Witkoff's economic interest with Qatar or some other kind of crazy backdoor diplomacy
yeah,
will buy Trump off. And then suddenly we have a nuclear Iran and millions of Iranians will stay in this prison of nations and this
yeah,
disaster tyranny. And that
yeah.
would be, of course, the worst outcome.
Exactly. No, I agree. I think Trump should do the right thing. And at the end of the day, you mentioned Qatar. Yes, I know Qatar does a lot of funding and a lot of dirty work for the Islamic Republic. But behind closed doors, and I actually know of a few of these sheikhs from Qatar and UAE and stuff, and Saudi even. So even in the public, they say, no, we don't want war with Iran. No, we don't want this. But behind closed doors, they all want them gone. I can guarantee you that. You
Mhm.
know, they all want them gone because they know fundamentally there can never be peace in the Middle East as long as the Islamic Republic exists. Even the Islamic Republic came and made threats that said, well, if you attack us, it's going to be a regional war. And we're going to get all the Gulf states, the states in the Persian Gulf. So that's like UAE, Qatar. We're going to start striking them. If you have military bases, because Saudi has American military bases, Qatar has American military bases, Oman, UAE, they all have American military bases. They're going to start striking those, which is a strike on the sovereignty of those countries as well. So it's going to be a regional war. And because I was watching Iranian TV, state sponsored Iranian TV from inside Iran, and then this guy, this professor, his name is Professor, I forgot, Mandarin. He always goes on Piers Morgan, and he's the most smug person ever. And he was saying, well, yeah, because all these Arab states that have American bases, then they are complicit, and we should attack them too. So this could be a regional war, you know. So it's in the interest of all the Arab states, including Qatar, including UAE, including Saudi, to get rid of the Islamic Republic and sign the Abraham Accords, and hopefully in the future we can make something called the Cyrus Accords, so we can normalize relations between Iran and Israel.
Let me ask you about the UK's position, because in the Iraq War, it was, of course, a very close partnership between the UK and the US in order to regime change and intervene and end the Saddam Hussein regime. How is it at the moment? Can the Americans expect some UK political or military support? And how's the general mood in the United Kingdom for regime change of Iran?
The public here are again split. I would say in the UK, the ones on the right, like Reform Party supporters or Conservative supporters, Advanced supporters, they're mostly for regime change. I have a lot of British friends that are standing firmly behind the Iranian people. However, on the other side, you have BBC, or Ayatollah BBC, I should say, and you have
Ayatollah BBC.
yeah, Ayatollah BBC. No, that's what one of the reasons the revolution happened in 1979 was because of the BBC, was because of the propaganda that BBC was doing on behalf of Khomeini and how the Shah is a dictator, and the brainwashing that took place in 1979. Most of it is actually responsible by the BBC. So anyway, so you have Ayatollah BBC that argues this is just the economic collapse of the country and people are just unhappy with the economics. And then you have this moron called Bushra. I don't know if you know her. Her name is, she's a Pakistani woman that went to Iran. I'm going to just look up her name. And she works with the BBC, by the way. Okay. And I want your viewers to go and look her up. Bushra Sheikh. She's a Pakistani that was born in the UK, Muslim, goes to Iran and says, oh, Iran is so beautiful. I walk down the street without hijab. This is all a Mossad operation. Iranian people are happy. Like, this is not journalism. This is a lie. Like, she should not be considered a journalist. When you go to the Islamic Republic, after they killed 50,000 people, and you go and walk down the street without a hijab and say, Iran is such a beautiful country, it's a Mossad operation, it's imperialism, USA, Israel, they want Persian land. Like, how stupid can you be? And unfortunately, some people watch this and they believe this. They all think it's Mossad.
BBC. That's on BBC.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's so bad. I'm
Look,
really.
I show you. I don't know if you're
Amazing, guys, is I have walked this entire rally in the
No.
middle of Iran without a hijab on. And I know
But I
what
heard
you're thinking.
there
You're
was a
how is she
Yeah.
in the middle of Tehran at that square without her scarf on? Nothing has happened to me. Nobody has abused me. Nobody has said anything. In fact, when you are a visitor in Iran, they treat you so well, even
Look, and the thing is, you see on her profile, look,
She has a lot of followers and she runs around for BBC. Unbelievable. The
yeah,
left is really gone crazy.
yeah,
The European left has completely disgraced herself.
yeah, no, 100%. Honestly, this is the type of people we have to fight with because I have lived experience. I lived in Iran. I was born in Iran. And what I would like to say to people like Bushra Sheikh is that go back to Pakistan and see if you have freedom of speech. Walk down the street in Pakistan and criticize your
Or
government.
in
See.
Afghanistan.
Oh yeah, but yeah, she's Pakistani. Or go and live in Iran for a year and criticize the government, see if you're still alive. Or go to Pakistan and dress half naked in the street and criticize Islam and see what happens to you. The problem with you is that you were born in the UK where there is democracy, and then you misunderstand that. You misunderstand the privileges that you had, and then you criticize the country that you moved to in favor of the countries that your parents ran away from, and somehow they are the victims. So these people, the moral compass on these people is broken, and they're making a false equivalence because they just do not understand matters. It takes for people like us that were born there to tell them.
Tell me, Yunus, the situation of the Chagos Islands, this, I think, Garcia Air Base, because I saw that the last time, 20 years ago, the Americans and British standing side by side and Saddam fell within weeks, yeah? And now the situation is that the British seemingly a little bit complicated in all aspects. I don't know. Have you lost the spirit of regime change? Are you now run by left-wing BBC journalists? Or not even the military base you want to give to the Americans? What's wrong in the UK now?
The UK is, I would say, is on the brink of collapse. I think if the UK is not saved within the next 5 years, it's gone completely. We had uncontrolled migration. We had the woke mind virus. We had all these left-wing policies taking over our institutions and our universities. And I think that there's a swing, though. I think people are sick and tired of Labour. They're sick and tired of Islamism. And I think the next election is probably going to be won by Reform or a right-wing party at that. I don't think Labour could be in charge anymore. And I think also the age of Labour conservative dominance is over, because I think both parties they call it the uni party. They're not different from each other. And I think probably Reform is going to win the next one. So that being said, is that I think, unfortunately, again, Britain has also been complicit in a lot of the atrocities in the world right now. If you look at from the end of World War II, what they done, look, I'm not blaming them for what they done. There was many positives from the British colonization and imperialism, but there was also a lot of negatives. And I think the main reason why the Middle East is in the position it's in now is because of British policies for the last 50 to 100 years. It was called the British Mandate for Palestine. And, after all the stuff that happened with Israel and Palestine, a lot of it is actually, if you actually think about it, the British are responsible for. Yeah. What happened with Iran? UK was the main perpetrator of getting rid of the Shah. I mean, America took the leading role, as they always do, but behind the scenes, it was the British saying, get rid of the Shah, put Khomeini in. As a matter of fact, Khomeini was on MI6 radar for 40 years before the revolution. So they protected him. They always had this guy on the sideline. So unfortunately, it has, I believe in karma, or I believe in what goes around comes around. So because of these things, the United Kingdom finds itself in this weird situation where all these countries that they messed up have actually kind of managed to come to their countries and infiltrate them from within, and it takes people like me to stop that, I think.
I think also the Soviet Union had a heavy piece of play when it came to the fall of the Shah, because they wanted to break Iran out of the Western Alliance during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And Khamenei was educated in Moscow at the KGB university. for regime change of in the West, basically. But nevertheless, obviously, this was not the bright moment of the West since 1979. Yeah. I would actually call it one of the most tragic accidents in the history of the world, and one of the most tragic events that unfortunately Iran has been broken out of the West and is then occupied by this Islamist terrorist for the last 47 years. And hopefully American wisdom and American firepower will liberate Iran now. This is our common wish. I would like to thank you very much, Yunus, for this discussion, and maybe some optimistic closing. Freedom will come to Iran in the next weeks, and we will invite you back to celebrate once for a victory lap. Once you can hopefully then maybe return to the united, beautiful Federal Republic of Free Iran and work there in a government position under the Shah's wisdom and the new government.
Hopefully, I hope Iran is freed very soon, and I hope Trump has to do what he has to do, and I hope they strike, and I hope they take people like Khamenei and just free the country. I think it's a historic moment. I think we live in biblical times, and I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so I don't think we should miss it. So yeah, hopefully, free Iran.
Let's call for freedom for Iran. Javid Shah. Thanks a lot, Yunus, for this very interesting talk. And we will be in touch in the coming weeks to see the course of event. And I invite you back for the show once the Ayatollah has fallen.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, good.
Stop now. Very good. I will send you everything, the update. Thanks a lot for coming to the show. And it will be live, and it will be put out as a podcast in the coming, I think maybe 2 days it will take.
Okay. So it wasn't live, yeah? It's pre-recorded. So
no, it's live. It's live all over. I've been on YouTube, on X, on Facebook, on LinkedIn.
You was? Okay, let me just, 1 second. Let me just I'll share it on my story so people see it.
Yes, it's very good, yeah.
What's your YouTube channel? Gunter?
Günther Fellinger, the same. I will send you.
You're from Belgium, yeah?
From Austria.
Austria, sorry. Okay, let me just.
This is exactly. I sent you my X, and it was also on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw. I think I have to wait for it to finish uploading.
Yeah, exactly. This takes in the river side. It takes some time. No, very good. A nice conversation.
Yeah.
Information, it will happen tonight. But I was told not to say in public.
Yeah. I mean, I have a feeling it's going to happen. Someone asked me on Friday. They asked me, what do you think is going to happen? I said, between the next 48 hours and 10 days. So 48 hours from Friday would be tonight. And then 10 days will be like in a week's time.
The logic would be tonight, because Trump wants to go with something to present into the State of the Union.
Okay. Is that what you think it is?
Yes.
I would say he would try to do the speech, then strike, so he doesn't have to speak about that, because I think he's going to get a lot of backlash.
We will know tomorrow morning.
God willing, inshallah.
Inshallah.
He hasn't finished uploading.
Yeah, it will go in. It takes some time, yeah.
Okay, no worries. So what do? You work for NATO expansion?
Yes, Austria is a neutral country, and I want to bring Austria into NATO. And I'm also very active in Kosovo, Bosnia, Ukraine. These are my main focuses. And the Iran thing has come now because Iran is an ally of Russia, sending all these Shahid drones. Yeah. And then since the start of the year, I'm also very active for the freedom of Iran. And I'm based in Vienna. If you're in Vienna, you have a friend here now.
Definitely. I don't have your number. What's your number?
It's 0043.
Okay, 1 second. It's Austrian number, yeah?
Yes, 43 is Austria. 676.
676.
780.
Yeah.
64.
Yeah.
28. You can send me a WhatsApp, and we are always in touch. And we can also do some collabs on Instagram if you want.
No, for sure. I was thinking the same. Do you have an editor?
Yes, I have an editor who is helping me
If
with
you
that
have
one.
some of the best parts from the interview, get
Mhm.
him to edit it and then send me the collaboration. I'll accept.
Okay, very good. That's
Okay.
always very helpful.
Yeah, no, definitely. We want to grow together. I sent you a message now. Okay.
Perfect. Yes, very good. I will make a link and send you my photo as a response.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Very
Should I
nice
leave the
to meet you.
window open? Or is that
No,
not
no,
finished?
it works automatically. Don't have to worry. It is basically, we can leave and it uploads in the background.
Okay, but I don't close the window. Yeah, just close the call.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Very good. Ich muss das ändern. Hallo? Grüß dich, Martin.
Hallo,
Sehr gut.
Hörst
Na,
du mich
geht eh
gut?
wunderbar. Das hat geklappt. Ja, ich höre dich sehr gut. Ich kann dich gut sehen. Wie geht's?
danke, gut. Und dir?
Sehr gut, sehr gut. Ich bin fleißig. Ich muss nur kurz die Deko ändern. Eine Sekunde, weil jetzt habe ich gerade ein Gespräch zum Freiheit des Irans gehabt. Und jetzt kommt die Ukraine dran. Und das muss alles mit der Deko übereinstimmen. Sehr gut. Was tut sie bei dir? Wie war es in der Ukraine?
War gut, alles gut geklappt. 2-, 3-mal Luftalarm, aber insgesamt alles recht gut geklappt, konnten alles übergeben. Wunderbar.
Sehr gut. Ich frage dich, machen wir das Ganze in Couleur oder einfach so in Zivil?
Ich hätte jetzt gesagt, einfach so, oder?
Okay, sehr gut. Ich frage mal. Aber erzähl mal schon die Geschichte, Studentenverbindung und was ihr alles gemacht habt und so, wie das alles entstanden ist.
Ja, kann ich sehr gern, ja.
Sehr gut. Ausgezeichnet. Jetzt muss ich nur was ändern. Ich glaube, wir müssen ein bisschen was ändern. Ja, ich muss da noch einen neuen Link schicken. Ja, das ist jetzt momentan verwirrend. Eine Sekunde bitte. Bleiben wir mal kurz, ich schicke da